fellow travelers, welcome on in. This is the 149th level of the RPG Cave. I'm one of your hosts, the level 199 human Dark Lord, Ryan Turford, and I am joined, as always, by the level 199 elf battle alchemist, Dr. Garret Bland. How's it going, Garret?
I'm doing good. Level 149, Ryan.
Yes.
We're getting there.
150. Level 150 is going to be next week, Garret. Can you believe that we made it to 150 episodes of this show?
I cannot, actually. I can't believe it's been that long. That's like, what, almost 3 years?
Yeah. It means exactly. I mean, to be fair, we've actually been doing this a little bit longer than 3 years now. But
right.
Yeah, it's because there were some weeks that we did miss. But yes, that we are getting basically to 3 full years worth of episodes.
Three full years worth of episodes. That's insane. What's gonna happen at level 150? Is there any big mobs going on, Ryan?
I don't know. I mean, we might have to fight like a mini boss or something like that. Like we're halfway. The game here. We're halfway to having to level again, Garret.
Is there some inverted castle stuff going on, like Castlevania?
I mean, we're already over the 100% mark.
That's true.
We're kind of in the inverted castle again, but then maybe it double inverts. Mm-hmm. Maybe it goes sideways.
It sounds good, Ryan. I gotta tell you the weather temperature outside right now.
Excellent. I love the start to the show, by the way.
It's 58 degrees Fahrenheit, which I don't know what it is in Celsius, but it's cold. Actually, colder.
Oh.
Than typical. It's summer, so you expect, very high 80s, 90s. It's a breezy 58 right now.
So, Garret, I did the calculations, and I mean Google did.
You searched it, yeah.
Yeah,
of course.
14.4 degrees Celsius. It's actually 14.444444444.
Yeah, for you non-Americans, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, to put it in perspective, Garret, it's 21 degrees Celsius here in Canada. So
isn't that interesting?
Yeah. So it's one of those things which it actually translates to about 70 degrees. So it's funny to think about the fact that it's actually warmer here in Canada than it is where you live.
Oh, it's a microclimate thing, man. The Bay Area, it's like always that sea breeze going on.
Yeah.
Oh, we don't really get a summer. You get sense. Maybe a few weeks of hot, weather here and there, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah. So. I've been happy because at least it's cooled down a little bit here because it was getting really hot for the last week where it was like 35 to 40 degrees every day.
It's crazy.
But so we had like this big rainstorm over the last day and a half, and that's really cooled things down.
Cool things off. That's good.
Yeah.
Any wildfires happening?
Not where I live because I don't really live in the woods. So, okay. That mostly is happening over in Alberta or BC where Sean lives. So
that's rough.
But over here in Ontario, we rarely get wildfires here because the climate itself is just so humid, first of all. But
makes sense.
Also, again, we just don't have a ton of like huge forests. Like we do have forests here, especially if you go up to like northern Ontario. But like even then, it's like very rare that wildfires will start there. So yeah,
I see. Okay, yeah, cool.
But
good to know.
Yes. There's our weather report for the week, folks. Congratulations. We should probably, of course, clear the dungeon so we can get to the raid boss as quickly as possible. So, folks at home, if you want to support the show, there's a number of amazing ways you can do that. Number one, if you're watching the live stream, right meow over at youtube.com/carpoolgaming, or if you're watching the video on demand later, don't forget to hit that like button, kick that subscribe button, and then let us know in the comments below what you think about indie role-playing games. We would love to hear from you. Also, if you're listening on audio feeds, don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well, or leave us a comment on Spotify, or, you can just, maybe leave us a nice Apple Podcast review or something like that. All that stuff really helps the show get discovered. Also, if you want one big podcast feed with the entire Carpool Gaming cinematic universe on it, or some exclusive content, head on over to our Patreon, patreon.com/carpoolgaming. Of course, got to shout out our 2 newest patrons, OldMrFrump, who joined at the gold tier, and Nuke the Bridge for joining at the ad-free all-in-one tier. So shout out to our brand new patrons. And also a shout out to Nuke the Bridge, by the way, who sent us a very, very nice message about the RPG Cave and how they love it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. shout out to them. And of course, last but not least, we have our website, carpoolgaming.com, where we've got Carpool Gaming merch, including an RPG Cave t-shirt, as well as the merch for our new show, Campfire, as well. So make sure to head over there. All right. Without further ado, Garrett, we're not going to read from the secret text because you got 3 things. Tell me about them.
I do have 3 things. I want to mention this Borderlands thing.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, my goodness. All right. You know me in Borderlands. I have it's like a guilty pleasure of mine, especially Borderlands 2. And Borderlands 3 is fine. It's a fine game. The movie, kind of advertises, earlier this year, has some pretty big actors too, like Kate Blanchett and
Kevin Hart, Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah, exactly. All the actors there. And then reviews come out last week, and you just see Rotten Tomatoes 0%.
Yep.
Across the board.
Yeah, and to be fair, a Rotten Tomatoes doesn't mean that the 0 doesn't necessarily mean the movie is a 0. It just means no reviewer liked it.
Yeah, no reviewer recommended watching the movie. Big waste of time.
Which is very rare, by the way, for Rotten Tomatoes, because usually there's at least one person that's like, maybe you should go see this movie. But no, in this case, no, they're just like, no.
And I saw some people on Twitter, like these reviewers posting, and there's one that was like a Borderlands fan. Like, hey, I'm a Borderlands fan, and I can tell you this, it's a huge waste of time watching this movie. It doesn't really connect to the Borderlands lore. It doesn't respect the characters at all, and it just seems like the director did its own thing.
Yeah,
and
they did the Halo thing.
They basically did the Halo thing.
Or the thing that people are kind of a little bit worried now about the Like a Dragon TV show, because they also recently came out and said, yeah, we haven't really played the games, and we kind of just wanted to do our own thing with it. Which is exactly like the same kind of quote we got from the Halo TV show too, which also sounds like what happened here too.
Yeah, which is very interesting to hear. Yeah, you think of other successful video game shows like The Last of Us. You got Neil Druckmann involved. Fallout. You got Todd Howard involved. So at least there's some, guess direction of the vision of the lore in the video games, but. Oh boy, that Borderlands movie. I'm not going to watch it.
I mean, I kind of want to watch it now, especially last night. Mike Minotti, who works over at GameSpeed, he was doing a live stream last night, and he posted this clip of him talking to Jeff Grubb, over the internet's Jeff Grubb, of course, over the phone about his review of the Borderlands movie, because Jeff Grubb apparently went to go see the Borderlands movie. And Jeff Grubb described it as the modern day version of the Double Dragon movie, which is so bad that but it's also like really cheesy and fun. So I feel like there's probably, like, for me as someone who loves bad movies, like movies especially that are so bad that they're good, that I'm like, I kind of just need to see this movie now, because maybe I think I'll actually enjoy this. Because if you turn your brain off and not think about the Borderlands connection, it actually sounds like it might be like a fun, stupid movie.
It sounds like a movie you get into is like just expect it being bad.
Yeah. It sounds like an Uwe Boll movie in a lot of ways. Yeah, Uwe Boll, for those that don't know, of course, did the Blood Rain movie, Far Cry the movie, all the Dungeon Siege movies, and House of the Dead. They were all bad. Like some of those movies are on like the bottom 100 chart on IMDb as far as like the worst rated movies of all time.
For me, going into a movie, I cannot waste my time. Just like video games, I don't like to waste my time a lot. So if it's like, this is a bad movie, this is a waste of time, I'm like, okay, thank you very much for telling me. Yeah. Not going to watch it.
Whereas I can have a good time watching like Two-Headed Shark Attack, or like some random like weird like Zombievers or something like that,
My goodness.
Yeah. Or Ghost Shark or something like that. Like I can have a lot of fun like with watching like really stupid movies. Troll 2, of course.
What's the Tornado Shark movie?
Sharknado.
That's it.
And of course it's 7 sequels, Garrett.
Yeah, there's so many sequels to that one.
I mean, you needed it. Just more Sharknadoes just kept popping up. So it's just like, of course. Of course.
So there you go. Borderlands movie. Don't watch it unless you're Ryan, or like focus on bad movies.
Or,
Sure.
I mean, just don't go into it expecting that it has nothing to do with Borderlands and that you're in
True.
for a movie that's so bad that it's good kind of thing. That's what it sounds like to me.
Second, Fallout London. You've heard of this one, right, Ryan?
I have a little bit. I think you told me about it first on the show, and then I went and looked it up.
Okay, cool. It recently got released, like the whole mod package. So Fallout London is a big mod, that's really taken over the Fallout 4 base game. Basically, it's a completely different Fallout game. It's like Fallout 4B or whatever, set in London, and they recently released it through GOG, G-O-G. And so, yeah, anyone can play it. Even if you have the Fallout 4 on Steam, you can go through a route where you downgrade the version on Steam. So you can grab the Fallout London package for free. And it seems like people who are into Fallout, that mod the game, really enjoyed this game a lot. So I've been hearing reviews, hearing people talk about it. It's just like, Bethesda needs to pay attention to this because it's actually quite good. It's like I wouldn't say, like Calibra's Fallout New Vegas or something, but it's more Fallout. It's a Fallout side game. So
yeah, it sounds like it's trying to do the same type of thing as New Vegas. It's just not up to the quality, as you said.
Exactly. So I'm excited to actually play it. I'll play it on my computer, of course, but I also found a route where I can play it on Steam or Steam Deck. Sorry. So I'm gonna figure out how to do that as well on my Steam Deck. See how well it runs, of course, and I'll report back to you how it goes because I loved Fallout 4. And
Nice.
so,
I mean, as long as they don't force you to build a big robot using a bunch of construction materials, I'm sure it'll be fine.
It sounds very much more survival RPG. There's much less guns, a lot more radiation around, a lot more factions involved. There's like 4 factions in 4. There's like 10 or 11 factions in Fallout London. There's a lot of similarities of buildings and landmarks, of course. So yeah, I'm excited to get into it. It seems like an RPG. They took off all the things I didn't care for and put in new things. So I'm excited to play it.
Nice.
I wouldn't put this as my main game, but I want to dabble in it and see how it goes.
Yeah,
So-
because you never know as well. Like especially if like the quality's not up to par as something like New Vegas. Like it might be cool to see, but it also might be one of those things where you don't want to put like the full weight into that kind of experience or whatever.
And last thing, Ryan, I started Final Fantasy VII OG.
Let's go.
Back
It's
at
finally
it.
happening.
Yeah, for the 3rd time.
Look, it's fine. You'll get through it this time, Garrett.
I will. Yeah. And it actually reminds me, like when I was going to the 3rd time, I'm like, oh man, I remember this. I remember that. It was like a weird nostalgia thing going on for me. But it's definitely fun. Going through the Midgar section right now and getting introduced to all the different characters, Barret, Tifa, and every time I go back to this, the soundtrack is just hitting.
Yeah.
I'm just like, who made this?
That was a fully Uematsu soundtrack when Uematsu was there doing the music for all the Final Fantasy.
It's like who made this on the PS1 back in 1997?
1997. Although again, like the music itself, out of all of the Final Fantasy games on the PlayStation 1, it's the one that basically still has like the MIDI soundtrack, kind of like the Super Nintendo soundtrack. So it sounds actually a lot closer to a Super Nintendo soundtrack versus an actual Final Fantasy soundtrack. Because if you listen to the music in 8 and 9, that's when they were going for like the CD quality kind of music. So they really were trying to do a lot closer to like fully orchestrated stuff, or really, really, really just trying to get away from that MIDI sound. So it's so interesting to hear you say that, Garrett, because again, it sounds like a Super Nintendo game, and part of that is as well goes back to the history of Final Fantasy VII, where and we'll talk about this when we do like the Final Fantasy VII episode at some point, but
Mm-hmm.
the fact that this was originally an N64 game that just didn't fit on the
N64
cartridge.
or was it?
No, it was
It was
it was supposed to be for N64.
Interesting.
But
But didn't they like pre-development, like they were thinking about doing a 2D SNES game, right?
Yeah, there was that too. But
Oh, okay.
but again, like the music was really composed with the N64 in mind. The
Interesting.
problem is they couldn't fit the game on the cartridge because the cartridge size
Interesting.
was too small.
Okay.
And of course, as you know, there are no 2 cartridge N64 games. So that's how it got moved to the PlayStation. Because that's why, like, also when you look at the visual style of it too, like the characters are very polygony. They're not they're not going for like the realism of like the Final Fantasy VIII, style. Which again, there's a direct comparison there because that game only came out like a year or two after that, after 7 did.
Cool.
So yeah, that's why it was designed in that way, because it was designed with the N64 in mind. So it's just interesting to think about.
Yeah, and then playing it on the Switch, and it's a good, version of it. And then you definitely have the speed up button, which is
Yep.
always nice to have in those battles. So
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Because some of them can go really long, or especially like when you do have to grind for stuff later, it becomes a godsend.
yeah. So there you go. I'm stirring that up.
Nice.
Finally.
And again, when you're finished, we will do a Final Fantasy VII episode, and it's going to be great.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'm excited you're finally playing it, man. And we'll talk
too.
about it over the course of the many weeks that this is going to take. So
Yes.
please be excited. Well, speaking of please being excited, we should probably read from the sacred texts because it's time to talk about indie RPGs once again, Garrett. Of course,
Let's
we
do
talked
it.
about indie RPGs on the show before because we've done multiple indie RPG like showcase episodes where we each brought a few indie RPGs to the table and talked about them. But this time around, first of all, props to Garrett, by the way, for coming up with this
thank
week's
you.
idea. Instead of us just bringing 3 more games to talk about, you actually brought directed questions for us for as far as like coming up with the 3 games that we're going to talk about today. So
Yeah.
we're going to kind of go through these together. And then, of course, we'll hear what the community has to say, the NPCs.
The
as it will.
NPC sounds good, man.
Yeah.
I'm down.
Yeah. So let's start, of course, with your Garrett Bland's first question.
Oh, okay. You want me to read out loud? Yeah.
Of course, you came up with them. It's your
Sure,
job
sounds
now.
good. All right, so the first prompt here, indie RPG that you have played and highly recommend to newcomers getting into the indie RPG scene. So that's the first prompt.
You mean to tell me, Garrett, that I can't just come up with an indie RPG that I haven't played that I think is good for beginners? The blasphemy. The
Oh, really?
blasphemy. I'm kidding.
Oh, okay. I was like, did I mess that one up?
Oh, no. Just the way you said that, I'm like, oh, man. I'm like, wait a second. Why would I recommend one I haven't played before? That would be weird.
that would be weird.
I mean,
There you
I've
go.
heard this RPG is good before, so I thought about that. No, so I like when I saw this question, Garrett, I had like a couple. Like my mind went a few places because the thing is about most indie RPGs that I've played is that there aren't a ton that are like too friendly to beginners. Like I feel like
true.
there's a lot of them that either have a lot of systems layered on top of them, or are obtuse in some way. And I just feel like AAA RPGs usually do a better job of like introing people to RPGs, because I feel like the people that like the independent developers that make a lot of indie role playing games are making them because they're inspired by other bigger role playing games. But they a lot of them are designed in such a way where like you have to usually have at least some RPG knowledge to go into it. So it was definitely like of the 3 questions tonight, I think this is probably like the one I struggled with the most to think about.
Okay.
So my answer is actually going to be one we've talked about on the show before,
Okay.
and that's Cosmic Star Heron from Savoy Games. Because
Good call.
if you like turn-based role-playing games at all, or if you want to get into turn-based role-playing games, then I think it's actually a great place to start. The story isn't amazing. It's just a very, tongue-in-cheek kind of fun story. But the reason why I think it works so well for beginners, one, it's not a huge time commitment. You can beat that game in 8 hours. In fact, you can platinum that game in 8 hours.
That's a good bite-size RPG.
Yeah,
Let me tell you.
the combat itself is not very complicated. Like it's fairly easy and straightforward. And not only that too, but like you can kind of you get a large variety of characters in that game that all play very differently from each other. So there will be a character when you're starting out that as you play through it or a set of characters that you will find works best for your party. And 3, it just is a really well put together role playing game with a lot of easy systems. Again, it's not too complicated or anything like that. And I think for newcomers to both turn-based role-playing games or just indie RPGs in general, I think out of all the indie games I've played, it's probably been the easiest one to get into. So
Interesting. Yeah. No, Cosmic Star Heroine, I played a good bit of it. I didn't finish it, but I agree with you. It's a very good, small, bite-sized RPG. And you forgot the fourth thing, Ryan.
Of course.
It's on the PlayStation Vita. Okay?
That's true.
You can play on the Vita. You can platinum it on the Vita, which is GOAT. And it plays really well on it, for sure.
And I mean, God forbid, if you don't have a Vita, it is literally on every other platform under the sun at this
That's
point.
true.
Except the Wii U. It's not on the Wii U, but everything else.
And it's on sale most of the time. Like it gets down to like $2 or $3 easily.
Even the non-sale price right now, I think, is $10.
Yeah,
so,
it's like $10. Yeah,
yeah,
pretty easy.
So even if you don't find it for $2 on a sale, $10 is still pretty good. It's still worth it, even for at that price.
I think getting, and I just want to preface for this one and just other indie RPGs in general, it is a turn-based, linear-based, story RPG. Just know that the writing or the character or the pacing may not be as grand or as fantastic as the memorable RPGs that you've played, like Final Fantasy VII. It is an indie RPG, and it's just following its own pacing and whatever. But I agree with you, Ryan. I think it's pretty easy to newcomers because it's so short.
Yeah,
and it's also very straightforward.
Yeah, especially with its combat systems in particular. Like its combat and the systems outside of combat are just very easy to wrap your head around versus a lot of other indie RPGs. Because I'm curious to know what you'll say for yours, but like the other one that came to mind was Undertale. For
That's
me,
a good one.
But I feel like Undertale is even just a little bit too more complicated than something like Cosmic Star Heroine is. And I think it's actually a little bit harder to get into.
I think another game that's similar to that, vein is Sea of Stars.
Yeah?
Yeah, Sea of Stars is a very prescribed game. It follows, like Super Mario RPG or Chrono Trigger like combat, but there's not a lot of grinding involved. You just kind of go through a map and you go through, there's certain fixed amount of enemies, certain fixed bosses. I think Sea of Stars is a very similar vein as Cosmic Star Heroine in that way. So, yeah. But that's not my recommended RPG.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
So, when I was getting into this, it actually reminds me of another game that recently got released, like this past week.
Okay.
And it's SteamWorld Heist 2. Just got released on this, platforms. So I'm going to recommend the first one. SteamWorld Heist 1, made by Image and Forward Games. They make, of course, the SteamWorld games. Came out in 2016, and SteamWorld Heist is interesting because it's a turn-based role-playing game where you it's mission-based, so you kind of have your own squad, your own crew out in space, and then you go out and face space pirates, your favorite, Ryan. Pirates.
Of course. Well, I mean, they're in space. I can tolerate them more than just normal pirates, Garrett.
Got it. They're not in the ocean. But anyways, you go through like each kind of mission or whatever. You go into it. It's like a 2D platform map area or whatever. You have your own squad, and it's like a fog of war deal where you have to explore the rest of the map. And figure out where the enemies are. And then once you figure out where they are, you have your gun and shooting, and then you kind of have to like do these acrobatic bullet physics in order to like pinpoint the weakness of the robots. I think they do a pretty good job of like giving you a tutorial of it, but also like you kind of have to like stop, and then you have to aim, and then once it's like pull. Like a video game pull
Right.
where you kind of just like figure out where the tracking of the bullets are, and then defeat the enemies. Sometimes you want to make sure you're not getting overpowered, so you don't want to be too aggressive in certain areas, and you want to explore in different ways. But I think it's a very easy RPG to get into because there's not a lot of systems going on. It's just you exploring a map with your squad. There's some weapons, like new weapon upgrades, and of course each character has its own skills. But other than that, there's not too much depth to it than that, and it's very small. It's a good bite-sized RPG, and I cannot wait for well, I can't wait. I'm going to wait out and see how SteamWorld Heist 2 does and what's the improvements on it compared to the first one. But you can get the first one on Steam for like $4 right now, which is like an easy recommend. So there you go. SteamWorld Heist 1.
Nice. Yeah. I haven't played that game at all, so I don't really know anything about it. But I was reminded more of it because the sequel, to your point, Garrett, came out this week. Especially, too, because, like, by the way, shout out to the developers over at Image Informed, because of course we got to see our good friend Bobby the Nintendo Guru in the game. It was such a wonderful tribute to Bobby in the game.
So they did put him in the game in 2. Okay, cool.
Seth actually over at $2 Hero actually posted a picture of it on Twitter.
Oh, that's so nice.
Go check it out.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so it was so cool to see a tribute to our friend, our lovely friend Bobby, the Nintendo Guru. For folks that don't know, who passed away due to COVID a few years ago. Who was in a lot of ways the main reason we're all here, because he kind of brought us all together, and it was one of the 2 founders of Carpool Gaming way back in the day. So, shout out to Bobby.
Shout out, for sure.
Yeah. So SteamWorld Heist. Yeah, that's one of those games where I'm like, I kind of want to try at some point. Even though, like, you're right, Garrett, like the pirate motif turns me off a little bit, and it's kind of like made me not want to like try it right away. But I do think that you're probably right about it being like a pretty easy game for beginners to get into.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, Ryan. SteamWorld Heist 2 looks like actual pirates because you're in the water,
right?
In the like on a planet or whatever. SteamWorld Heist 1 is literally in space, and the villains happen to be bandits. They have a pirate kind of, flair to them. So
yeah.
Although
this week, Garrett, of course, we had not 1 but 2 pirate-based role-playing games come out in the same week, because we had that, and also Cat Quest 3: Pirates of the Caribbean come out. So
you got to play that one.
I mean, clearly I need to. And I've actually heard I've never played the Cat Quest games, but I've heard that those are also pretty good for beginners too. So
it looks cute.
Yeah, I think they're mostly designed for younger audiences anyways. So I think like that's their target demographic anyway. So I think it's probably just naturally a lot easier to get into than some of these other games. But all right, Garrett, hit us with the second role playing game.
Prompt number 2, which I think we don't think about as much, an indie RPG that has been released but want to get into at some point. So Ryan, what is an indie RPG that's been released? You're like, man, I need to get into it, but you just haven't had the time yet.
Okay, so now there's an obvious answer that has been on every tournament bracket that I've done for the last like 4 tournament brackets now, and it's lost every single time. But it's not going to be the answer that I go with, because that's because everyone kind of knows this one already. This Way's Madness Lies, the newest game from Savoy Games. After Cosmic Star Heroine. I've been wanting to play that forever, but I've never like actually sat down to do it. And again, I've put it on every tournament bracket now, and it's lost every single time. Although it got pretty close with the July tournament bracket, Garrett, to actually winning. It made it to the quarterfinals. So it was like,
that's pretty good.
Yeah. So it was like very close to going all the way, but it got run over by The Legend of Zelda, unfortunately. So
of course,
as a game does. So that's one for me, and Sea of Stars is another one I could easily slot in here too, because I haven't played Sea of Stars either, and that's kind of been on my my backlog of stuff I need to play at some point. But the one I'm actually going to mention that you've talked about on the show before, Garrett, is a game that you really like, is Wargroove. I've never played Wargroove or Wargroove 2, and I like strategy role-playing games, and I love games that involve music. So like Wargroove seems like a game that would be totally up my alley, but I've just never sat down to play Wargroove or Wargroove 2. And I really kind of want to at some point. Like I think like those are games, like indie role-playing games that I really want to try at some point, because I really think that like they could be really fun and be up my alley, especially with the type of games that I like. And I'm always looking for a good like strategy role-playing game. And I think that those would actually kind of fit the bill a little bit.
Cool, man. I like the shout out of Wargroove. I very much enjoyed the first game coming out. Oh man, it's been a while now, like 2019.
Yeah, it's been like 5 years since that game came out.
Yeah, the first game. And as I mentioned before, I did review it for Bobby in his YouTube channel back in the day on the Nintendo Switch. That was one of the few video reviews I actually did ever. So I'm quite proud of that one. And it's it's such a treat. Wargroove it's very much, copying the template of Advance Wars, right? So you have you go into a mission-based kind of 2D tactical RPG, and then you have a unique commander, which is nice, but you also have many different unit types. You got like pikemen, you got regular infantry, you got cavalry, and each of these have their own special like advantages, disadvantages, and skills. And then you also have siege units. You also have flying units, and it's basically like advanced chess in a way, where it's grid based, and each of you just kind of take your turn of all the units, and then you also have currency, and that currency kind of goes up depending on how many buildings that you capture in the map, and then you can spend more to make more units. I think the first Wargroove game is I would not recommend it to a newcomer in terms of RPGs, unless you're really into 2D tactical mechanics. Like I think of people who play XCOM or something like that. Like if you have that experience, then yeah, for sure get into Wargroove. But like if anyone wants to get into RPGs, like, oh, what's the first one, I would not recommend Wargroove, because it's gonna be difficult.
Although that is kind of the problem with strategy role-playing games in the first place, Garrett, as far as recommending them for new players, where it's like, you probably shouldn't start with strategy role-playing games as your first role-playing games. Don't be like Ryan, whose first role-playing game that he got into was a strategy role-playing game. Because I think a lot of them are more complicated than just a lot of turn-based role-playing games or action RPGs. So just because they're naturally designed that way, because they're strategy games. So I think they're just harder to get into for people that are just new to role-playing games in general. So I think that's a common sentiment across all of them. Even stuff with like Fire Emblem, where I think Fire Emblem is fairly easy to get into with some entries, but at the same time, like, it's not the type of game I would recommend for like people brand new to role-playing games to hop into.
Yeah. I think, if you're a chess player or like really into that type of tactical strategy, I sure go ahead. But other than that, I would not recommend Wargroove as your first game. You mentioned Fire Emblem. I think Fire Emblem is probably one of the easiest entries for a tactical role-playing game. For sure, Mario plus Rabbids is a great XCOM-like strategy tactical role-playing game.
I'd even argue something like Shining Force is up there too. Like Shining Force 2 specifically.
Is pretty straightforward.
Like I think the second one in particular, since it refines some more stuff, and it's very linear. I think that one in particular, I think it's really good for new people too. But again, cool. they new people in terms of people who are newer to strategy role playing games specifically, and they want to get into them, kind of thing.
When you mentioned Wargroove, it also pops another game that I won't. It's not going to be in my mention, but Fellseal Arbiter's Mark is another indie RPG that's a tactical role-playing game. It really based it off of Final Fantasy Tactics, and it's pretty good. I hear it's really, really good. The story is just fine, but like in terms of just tactics and like class-based systems for each of the units and how disposable they are, like Final Fantasy Tactics, it's pretty good. I heard it's worth checking out. But Anyways, okay, I'm gonna get into my indie RPG that I need to get around to, and it's funny that you picked Wargroove
Yeah.
because I picked Wargroove too.
Of course you did. Of course you did. Why wouldn't
So
you?
yeah. So Wargroove 2 came out last year, October 5th, and I actually got this day one. I just never got around to it, so I do have it on my Steam library. And it's very and I actually watched some videos and reviews of it. It's very, very similar to the first Wargroove. Think of a direct sequel to the first game, same 2D pixelated art. It's just more stuff to do. So instead of one campaign, there's 3 different campaigns with more factions. And sorry to tell you this, Ryan, there is a pirate faction.
Of course.
Of course.
I mean, again, I can deal with a pirate faction just as long as it's not like the whole game is about pirates and doing piratey things.
Got it. Yeah, so they have 3 different campaigns for this, and then there's more unique units for each of the factions, which is pretty cool to see. And I think they just add a little bit more complexity to it. So you can get certain items in the map in this new game where if you equip it with certain infantry, they can act like as a unique or special units or something like that. There's extra land-based buffs and debuffs compared to the first one, and then there's also like shakeups, like earthquakes that can happen in the map where it literally drops like squares, and you can try to push enemy units into those kind of holes or those where the earthquake was. So there's a little bit more just nuance to it, but it's not really changing the game or anything like that. When I looked at Steam reviews, it was like, this is more of Wargroove. So if you like the first one, you're gonna like the second one. And I would still highly recommend people, if you want to get into these games, play the first one, because it's just 2 is just adding more to it.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is. So
Well, exactly. Like I think it probably introduces you to the mechanics and stuff like that, so then you're ready for Wargroove 2. Because by the sound of it, it's more Wargroove, but it has more mechanics on top of the mechanics in the first game. So it's probably better to start with the first one. Not only that too, but it's like it's one of those situations. But from the sounds of it too, where it's like you're not going to want to go back and play the first one if you played the second one first. So it's like if you have any intention of playing the first one, it sounds like that's the way to start.
I do want to mention that these games are not short. They're easily 40 to 50 hours. It can be longer depending on how you play the map. I think the one negative side of these games is that you can get into a stall with enemy units within battles where you just kind of go back and forth if you don't know how to strategize. It's just a war of attrition type of deal. These games can get hard. I find it harder than Fire Emblem. I find it harder than most other tactical role-playing games that I played. So, but they have good difficulty sliders too. So they have you can change the health of enemies. You can change the damage. You can change the currency that you get in each turn. So you can tailor it to what you want, but just know that the default options can be somewhat difficult to get through the battles.
Okay.
So
I mean, the main thing is it doesn't sound like it's as difficult as Natural Doctrine, and that's the bar for me at that point, because that game's too hard.
Last thing I want to mention with Wargroove 2, there's a new mode called called Roguelike Conquest mode. And basically what you do with that one is that it's very like Slay the Spire, where you kind of go through each little squares, so each little missions, and then as you go on these missions, you kind of increase the amount of your units and your kind of your commanders, and then you go through adventures in some way. But there's no building, there's no making new units. It's just whatever you have in your party. So nothing is dispensable. If one of your infantrymen dies, they just die forever. It seems like a cool little like quick take of the game compared to the long strategy battles that's in the campaigns. It looks pretty good for like if you want short little missions here and there. that's a good way to go. So anyways, that's and then also last thing for both Wargroove 1 and 2, there is map editing and like map creating, and it's very well done. I would say it's pretty much on the similar level as like Mario Maker or RPG Maker, where you kind of just make your own 2D map. You can make your own storyline too. You can write your own lines.
Oh, that's interesting.
You can literally create your own campaign within the game if you want, and then you can upload it to the cloud where people can download your campaigns and go through them. So there's a lot of cool extra content over there as well. So
got to get that UGC in there, user generated content that used to be a term, because that actually was like a big thing on the PS3. I don't know if you remember, Garrett, was like there were like Sony was experimenting with this. Infamous 1, as an example, had this whole campaign level editor where you could actually like make your own missions in Infamous 1 and then write your own storylines and everything like that, and it would play out in these like really, really stilted cutscenes.
Oh my gosh.
But it was like but back then it was like the coolest thing, because like you could like I made a bunch of my own Infamous missions and then put them online for people to play. So it was interesting.
I didn't know Infamous did that. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. All right, and final question, Garrett.
All right, third prompt. What is an upcoming indie RPG that you're excited to play, Brian?
Yes, this is a good one. Now, first of all, before I answer this question, I want to bring in Marcus O'Neill 79, who asked us a very similar question. Marcus O'Neill asks, "What is each of your most anticipated indie RPGs, and why is it Alabaster Dawn?" So we can talk about what our most anticipated indie RPGs are, in addition to upcoming indie RPG that we're excited to play as well. I guess we can kind of rope this into the same topic because they're very similar.
Yeah,
because they might even be the same. So first off, for me, the one that's most imminent that I'm most excited about is Keylocker, a cyberpunk RPG adventure. This was one we saw at the Latin Games Showcase of all places, where it's basically this cyberpunk kind of futuristic-y kind of role-playing game, but it's very like 8 or 16-bit inspired. Like or in a lot of ways, it's trying to look like a Sega CD role-playing game, which Garrett, as you know, goes straight to my heart in a lot of ways, because I love the Sega CD like that. I'm no stranger to Sega CD games, so it's just very, very much reminded me of that, or like a Sega Saturn role-playing game in a lot of ways, where you've got these 3 different characters, and like the combat itself is turn-based, but it's on this like grid, and it's got these musical elements that go in where you have to like time your attacks with the music. And from the trailer, it sounds like it's got like some really cool songs. So this one is just checking all the boxes for me personally, where I'm like really, really excited about this one. This is supposed to come out this summer, Garrett, but no release date yet. And we're at like halfway through August at this point. So I'm curious to know if it'll actually come out this summer or later. But Keylocker is one that I'm like super, super excited about. I think this is a really rad looking game. I don't know if you've seen this game, Garrett.
I'm looking into it right now, and you're reminding me that it looks super dope. It's as you said, it's a cyberpunk future, but also has this kind of, I don't know, I like the color palette of it. It's very neon, very futuristic, and as you said, it's music based, which I'm not a big music based fan. Like, I do like music rhythm games if it's like a Guitar Hero, but like once you put movement in attacks with rhythm, it just my mind explodes.
Because you're right, some games go a little too far with it, like the Crypt of the Necrodancer or Cadence of Hyrule.
Crypt of the Necrodancer was crazy.
I'm not into that level of music games, but this, it seems like it incorporates it in like some smaller ways, especially because I did play the demo for this and really enjoyed it.
Oh, cool.
And it wasn't like as overbearing as something like Crypt of the Necrodancer was. So cool. That's why I actually did really. That's why I'm actually really looking forward to this one. I think it's going to be pretty solid. I think the story is the only thing that is questionable, but that's just kind of how I feel about a lot of indie role playing games in a lot of ways.
I'm looking at just the developer page for Key Locker. So it's made by Munana. They just make a lot of. So this is what they say: turn-based JRPGs with or without timed hits, reminiscing of the Mario RPG games.
Yeah.
With pixel art mystery. That's
because the rhythm stuff is much closer to something like that, like much closer to Mario RPG.
I see. So I mean, they have plenty of other RPGs they've released in the past before. I have one of their games. I guess it's just got them in one of those big packages, the Virgo versus the Zodiac, and has very positive on Steam reviews. So that's kind of cool. I'm interested how Key Locker does, and when it will be announced. It looks like they're just kind of just working on it, and it's like, well,
yeah.
Well,
no, this is the type of thing where and this happens with a lot of indie RPGs. I'm expecting that they'll just announce the release date for that a week or two before it comes out. Like that just happens a lot in the indie RPG space.
You don't really see these hexagon-based kind of mechanics as much, which is pretty cool to see as well.
Exactly. I think it looks pretty cool. So that's up there. And then as far as farther into the future, to Marcus O'Neill's question, one, Alabaster Dawn, which just got announced a couple days ago. I'm very excited about because I love Crosscode. Crosscode is one of my favorite RPGs of the last generation. I thought it was it's a really solid action RPG. Very much reminded me of something like Legend of Zelda, but in much more leaning into the action RPG space than something like that, because it's designed to be in an MMO, like a fake MMO. So it has a lot of MMO mechanics kind of built into it. So I think that is Crosscode was a really, really solid game with an incredible story and some fantastic music and visuals. But it just got really, really mechanically complex. So it's why it's not a game I would recommend for new people. So Alabaster Dawn is kind of their newest game. But we don't really know a lot about it at this point. But that's one I'm very excited to learn about more in the future, especially with how good Crosscode is. So I'm hoping that that's good. And the other one I want to mention, Garrett, we saw at the Xbox showcase this year, Expedition 33, Claire Obscure.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that one where it's looks very AAA as far as the visual design, because I think it's an Unreal Engine 5 game. But it's a turn-based role-playing game. But it reminds me of Legend of Dragoon or something like that, where when you do your attacks, you have button prompts come on the screen, and you have to time your button prompts with time your attacks with the button prompts, in order to do certain combos against the enemies. Which again just reminds me of Legend of Dragoon on the PS1 in so many ways. So this game looks really awesome. And again, this is another one that I just can't wait to learn more about at some point.
For sure. This is the one that everyone got into. It's like, oh, this looks like a typical action RPG. And then they get into the combat, and it's a turn-based RPG.
Yeah.
And everyone's freaking out. It's like, oh my gosh. And it's just it's cool to see. I think it's just everyone's just impressed how refreshing in the style it looks, because it does look like a Western-made role-playing game made for action combat, but it's actually a turn-based RPG. So
but it gives it a little bit of that action flair with the turn-based actions in combat. It looks a little bit more complicated than something like Mario RPG. Or again, it's much closer to something like Legend of Dragoon, where you have multiple combo actions, and you probably can customize that throughout the game.
And it's there's paintbrushes, and it's very foresty, very green. Very interested to see how that goes. Yeah. Cool.
So that's kind of the short list from me. There just isn't a ton of indie RPGs that I'm submitting. Of course, the final chapter for Deltarune from Toby Fox, I'm excited to play at some point too. But it's we've talked about it before on the show, Garrett, where it's just I only have so much time for role-playing games as it is, and it is harder to get into or keep up with the indie RPG scene. So it is good to kind of do episodes like this where we can kind of talk about this a little bit. But it's just they're not always my go-to, especially because as we talked about, the story in particular of a lot of these games they're not always the most well-written games in the world.
Yeah Cool. Yeah, I have a couple of short list indie RPGs I'm excited about. So let me start with this one. That was with the prompt. Demon School. That's coming around the corner.
Yeah, I think it's out next month, right?
It's out next month in September. The developers Necrosoft Games. Now, Demon School, it kind of looks like an isometric tactical RPG, very reminiscent of Final Fantasy Tactics or Persona 1 and 2. Has very dark undertone themes, right? It's Demon School, so you got a bunch of demons out, and then you're kind of having this ragtag of high school students, which is going to be more party-based. It kind of looks like, you go through a system where you increase relationship with friends and with people, so you get power-ups or stuff like that. So anyways, yeah, it looks super dope. And then basically what you do with the tactical RPG standpoint is that each of your you get a player phase and then an enemy phase, so very different than, let's say, Final Fantasy Tactics, where you actually plan out your phase first, and like you literally plan out every single movement, because depending on what you do in the grid, it looks like you do certain combos or certain weaknesses to enemies depending on the order of your characters and the order of what you do things. So placement is very important, and also the way you move your characters in their order is very important with the game, which I really enjoy. As you know, I like to plan things out before it actually goes through with things. That's why I don't really care for Final Fantasy Tactics as much, because it's like kind of character to character type of deal.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, you plan it out and you do amazing combos.
It's actually kind of reminds me of something like Disgaea, because you do that in Disgaea, where it's like you plan all of your moves first. The order doesn't matter as much in something like Disgaea, but you do all your stuff first, and then it goes to the enemy phase, and where the enemies do all their stuff.
Yes, definitely. So yeah, it looks really cool. They have a couple of trailers out. They do have a demo out, but it's right around the corner. It's definitely coming out. And they have a hard date sometime next month, I think, early next month. So cool to see that. And that I looked into the other games that Necrosoft Games have made and released. They're pretty small. So there's one called Gun House, which is a matchup game mixed with a tower defense. Looked super weird, but the art style, I can understand it's coming from the studio or developer. It's kind of just mixed reviews on Steam. But they also have this game called Hyper Gun Sport, which is think of what's that disc game that you go back and forth between the two teams? I forgot what it was called, but it's like a remake of a older video game. It's like you throw a frisbee or something like that.
I don't remember.
But
I'm drawing a blank here.
You know what I'm talking about, though, right? Like it's this.
Yeah.
That you go kind of like back and forth. It's like ping pong. It's very similar like that, but instead of like a disc, it's like a ball, and it has gravity, and then you kind of shoot. It's a shooter basically, and you like kind of shoot the ball to like the other side. And it's funny, in the trailer of this game. This came out late 2022. They say the people who are gonna bring you Demon School. And I'm just like, I never see a trailer of a video game that's about to be released that's advertising a future game that they're going to release later on. So, but I guess you could do that as an indie studio. And I think maybe Demon School, they put most of their resources in. It sounds like the dream game that they've been wanting to make for a while. So I'm very excited for it.
I'm actually glad you brought that one up too, because that was one that like I forgot about when putting this together, but I remember actually being pretty excited about that one too. But a couple things from the chat. Of course, Captain Awesome says Disc Jam.
That's it.
And then, of course, Yarden just says Windjammers, which I thought of immediately too, but that's not a role-playing game.
Well, the Hyper Gun Sport is not a role-playing game either. That's just what they're releasing. They just released last year, but yeah, it's Disc Jam or Windjammers.
Okay.
A type of going back and forth.
It's not like Pyre, where Pyre is literally just like NBA Jam, but it's a role-playing game.
Right. It's literally like 2D, and then there's like a ball that goes like back and forth. It has positive reviews. Again, Necrosoft games, when I'm looking into it, like their previous games, they are very, very small. They're in like the tens and hundreds, maximum 100 reviews on Steam. So this is their big hit, I think, and we'll see how it goes, actually.
I was gonna say the only downside is that there's just a lot of stuff coming in September, so I just hope it doesn't get lost in the shuffle.
And then the publisher is interesting too. This Yeastbread Games, and I looked into them. They're just a publisher, and they just publish so many different indie games, like World of Horror, and then VA11 Hala, and then the Y2K, a postmodern RPG. So yeah, they don't do any development themselves though. They just publish all these indie, mainly RPGs, but also other games as well.
Okay.
I think you would like World of Horror. It looks very cool.
I mean, it's got a cool name. Garret.
It's like 2D. It's an art style that's trippy. It's very out there. So yeah.
Okay.
Anyways, that's it. That's it. I'm done.
That's all. That's all, folks. So, of course, that's not all, folks. We got one more question, of course, from the NPCs to kind of round out this conversation. We got a question from Skycatcher Reflectin, who says, my top three indie RPGs are as follows: Moon RPG Remix, Undertale, and any Zeboyd RPG. Nothing specific, just any Zeboyd RPG. I'm going to say Penny Arcade Adventures is Skycatcher Reflectin's third choice here. Thoughts if you haven't discussed any of these games already. So, first of all, we talked about Zeboyd enough on the show, I think. You know, I feel like Skycatcher probably already understands. We like those games. As far as Undertale, I like Undertale a lot. But I don't know how you feel about Undertale, Garret. I don't know if we've ever talked about it.
I need to play it. That's one of those like, oh yeah, that looks pretty good. I would like to get into it. I did play like the first like couple hours like years ago.
Okay.
I just never gotten around to it. I have it on Steam. It does remind me a lot of like Earthbound.
It is. Yeah, it's trying to be like that. Yeah.
But it's not significantly long, which is good. So it's pretty short.
But even then, like, I'm not gonna lie, I think I'm definitely on the outside with this one, this opinion. But I actually think that game goes on a little too long. Like it's a little. Okay. I feel like it should have actually been an even tighter experience.
Interesting.
It like by the time I got to the end of it, I'm just like, please just end already. I'm kind of ready for this to be over, kind of thing. Especially if you go for like the longer ending too, because there is like a. Because there's obviously different endings for Undertale, depending on how you play the game, and like the like for the good ending, for example, like that takes a very long time. And also, Garret, that's another game you can play on your PlayStation Vita. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, that's true. I can play on my Vita. I can also play on my Steam Deck. Yeah, it looks super dope.
Yeah, and then the last game that Skycatcher says is Moon RPG Remix. Now, obviously, Garret, I don't think you knew anything about this one, right? Because I didn't either. I had to look it up.
Yeah, no idea.
So this is actually a re-release of a PlayStation 1 game that came out. But it was an independently developed game on the PlayStation 1 that was only released in Japan, that then got a port to modern platforms starting with the Switch back in 2020. And it's basically like it looks to me like a role play, like a turn-based role-playing game of some kind. Again, I didn't really know anything about this until I pulled this up, but it's an interesting looking game. It's got like a interesting art style to it, where
it has a Rayman vibe to it.
Yeah, your character does not have body parts. You're just made up of clothes, it looks like. But
yeah, it looks like a fine video game. It actually reminds me, not PS1, but more like a Sega game or something
like it's got that like Toe Jam and Earl kind of vibe.
Toe Jam and Earl, vibe, for sure. With this game, cool.
Yeah,
it looks cool. I actually want to shout out indie RPG Earthblade. Excited to what that game is. Is from the makers of Celeste.
Okay.
And it looks super dope. It reminds me of Shovel Knight a little bit in terms of its pixelated art style. Is that an RPG actually?
Earthblade?
Yeah.
That's the thing.
No,
we don't know enough about it to be able to make that distinction.
I'm sorry. The description: explorer action platformer. So
Yeah.
my bad.
I
Not
mean,
an
yeah.
RPG.
I was gonna say, like, I didn't think of it as an RPG, but
I don't know why I thought it was an RPG, but it's not. So
I mean, I love Celeste. We here at Carpool Gaming, we love Celeste. So I hope this game's awesome. But
yeah. Cool.
we'll find out. But there you go. But before we go, of course, we got to say thank you to all of our patrons over at patreon.com/carpoolgaming, starting with our ultimate producers, Jonathan Brown, the man behind the music on the Xbox Drive and the PlayStation Drive. You can find the link tree to all of its music at linktr.ee/PME/GIB. And Cwagmire, who humbly reminds you that the best babes are in fact Xenobabes. All the links to all of our ultimate producers can always be found in the description of our podcast, so please make sure to support them, as they're pretty awesome when they support us. Our platinum producers, Peje, Smokin Joe, The Captain, and Tim Paullin, and our gold members, Adam K, Anna, Awesome Dave 1337, BobLoblaw, Brad Moore, Brian Reese, Cecily Carrozza, CowboyDangerD, Dan and Luma, Dannohh, Drellesh, Emily O'Kelly, Hoppel, Jan32, Kia Savoy, OldMrFrump, Patrice Mallette, Shane Erickson, Tech Mike, the Jiggy Collector, and Tim Aulph. Huge thank you once again to all our patrons over at patreon.com/carpoolgaming. Of course, if you want to hop in the car with us, head over there, choose the tier that's right for you. And now, Garrett, plugs go.
You can follow me on Twitter at Blind Explosion, and that's pretty much it. I'm on the Discord. I read every single message, including the Xeno discussion going on right now, Xeno Saga, Xeno Gears, or whatever. I need to play those too, but
they all blend together, Garrett.
They all blend together. Yeah.
They're all. I mean, and whenever their next game is, it'll be Xeno something, and not Xeno.
Savoy Prime definitely, holds his opinions in all these conversations. I
was more appalled that he tried to tell me that Zelda 2 is not a good game, Garrett. Like, I just had to shake my head at that.
And Mana series, he's
and the Mana series. Yeah. I can't talk about Visions of Mana apparently on the PlayStation Drive, where he's just gonna just give me that look, Garrett. That look that he's like, why are you talking about this trash game? Essentially.
Yeah, the game he hasn't played. Cool. Sounds good.
Yeah. Well, as for me, you always find me on the old Twitter, aka X, at Ryan Turfin. You also find us on X at Carpool Gaming, right here, youtube.com/Carpool Gaming. Of course, also on Twitch, twitch.tv/Carpool Gaming Live. We're doing a lot more stuff on Twitch lately, so including maybe it sounds like we might be doing a pretty special stream tomorrow night, if all goes as planned. Cool. So make sure to head on over on Twitch if you haven't been over there. We've been doing some cool stuff. And then, of course, podcast services around the globe. So for Garrett Blaine, I'm Ryan Turford. This has been the 149th level of the RPG Cave, and we're out.
Bye-bye.